The contract landed on my coffee table with the kind of thud that usually precedes bad decisions. I stared at it for a full 30 seconds before picking it up, already regretting the curiosity that made me flip past the cover page. Love in the Spotlight, a dating reality show. The kind of program where desperate celebrities pretend to fall in love for camera time and sponsorships. My agent, Margaret, had already texted me 17 times in the past hour. The notifications were piling up like passive-aggressive confetti on my phone screen. Sophia just read it. The money is ridiculous. You're not getting any younger. Don't make me call your mother. She knew exactly which buttons to push. I was 47 years old, too old for dating shows, according to every unwritten rule of Hollywood. Too old to be playing will they or won't they with strangers while cameras captured my every micro-expression. Too old for the kind of public humiliation that came standard with reality television. But Margaret was also right about one thing. The money was ridiculous. I flipped to the compensation page and felt my eyebrows climb toward my hairline 0.7 figures for 6 weeks of filming, plus wardrobe budget, plus travel. Plus a discretionary incidentals line item that could fund a small country's healthcare system. My last film had been an indie darling that made exactly $17 at the box office and earned me a critics award that nobody remembered, and my face wasn't on any billboards. My name wasn't trending, Di was, by every metric, the kind of actress who had peaked somewhere around her 40th birthday and was now coasting on Legacy and the occasional voiceover gig. 6 weeks, 7 figures. All I had to do was pretend to date someone for television. I signed a contract before I could talk myself out of it. The call sheet came 3 days later. I was in the middle of a very important argument with my cat, Benjamin, about whether he needed to be fed for the 3rd time that morning when my phone buzzed with the production schedule. I scrolled through the names of the other cast members and felt my blood turn to ice water. James Anderson. I read it 3 times. 4 times. 5 times, as if repetition would somehow change the letters into something else. Something that didn't feel like a knife twisting in my chest. James Anderson. My ex-boyfriend. The man I'd spent 3 years loving and exactly 18 months trying to forget. The man I'd left because he was too much. Margaret called before I could process the information. Before you say anything. Are you insane? I kept my voice calm, but my knuckles were white against the phone case. You knew he was on this cast. You knew, and you didn't tell me. The production team didn't mention him until after you signed. Technically, I found out the same time you did. Technically, you're a terrible liar. She sighed. The sound was long and weary, like she'd been expecting this fight since the moment she sent me the contract. Sophia, listen to me. The network is calling this the celebrity reunion season. They specifically cast people with complicated history. You weren't going to avoid him forever. I've been avoiding him for 18 months. It's been going great. 18 months of avoiding a man in the same industry is a statistical anomaly, and you know it. Besides, the money is not worth sharing a house with James Anderson. But even as I said it, I knew I was lying. The money was absolutely worth it. I'd been broke before. Broke was the kind of hungry that didn't go away when you ate. Broke was the kind of tired that came from working 3 jobs and still not making rent. Broke was the kind of desperate that made you sign contracts without reading the fine print. Broke was worse than any ex-boyfriend. Fine, I said, and Margaret's relieved exhale was audible through the phone. But if he tries anything, you'll have full production support, and a legal team, and me, screaming at everyone until they fix it. That was almost reassuring. The first day of filming was exactly as chaotic as I'd expected. The production team had rented out an estate in the hills of California, white architecture, infinity pool, the kind of minimalist luxury that made you feel like you were living in a magazine spread rather than an actual house. Cameras were everywhere. Boom mics hung from the ceiling like sleeping bats. PAs scurried around with clipboards and earpieces, coordinating the controlled chaos. I was assigned a dressing room on the 2nd floor, small but private, a vanity table with those ring lights that made everyone look like they were on a spaceship. A wardrobe rack with options I hadn't approved but would probably end up wearing anyway. And a list of suggested talking points for my first interview with the production team. Question, what are you looking for in a partner? Question, have you ever been in love? Question, why did your last relationship end? I stared at the questions and felt my stomach turn. The last one was already loaded. The producers knew about James. Everyone in the industry knew about James. His team had probably already leaked some carefully crafted version of our breakup to the press, positioning him as the victim of my coldness while they waited for me to refute it. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. The interview was scheduled for 3 p. and the green room, which was actually just a spare bedroom with nicer furniture and a coffee machine. I arrived 5 minutes early, wearing the most neutral outfit I could find, dark jeans, a cream sweater, minimal makeup. I wanted to look approachable, but not memorable, if background friendly. The kind of person the camera would glide past without lingering. The interviewer was a young woman with the kind of bright, hungry eyes that said she'd been hired for her ability to make people confess things they'd regret. Sophia Anderson, she said, like she was introducing me to an audience that already knew who I was. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for having me. We sat across from each other in 2 leather armchairs. A camera operator stood behind the interviewer, framing us both in the shot. The lighting was warm, flattering, and invasive. Let's start easy, the interviewer said. What made you say yes to love in the spotlight? I smiled. The money. She laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that said, is she joking? And I hope she's joking, and please don't say anything unscripted. I'm begging you all at once. I'm kidding, I said, because I wasn't going to be the reason a PA got fired. I wanted to try something different. I've been acting for a long time, and reality television feels like a challenge, a chance to be myself, rather than playing someone else. It was a good answer, a safe answer, The kind of answer that would get clipped into a promotional trailer and make me look both vulnerable and brave. The interviewer nodded, clearly happy with the response. And what are you hoping to find here? I thought about James, but I thought about the way he used to look at me, like I was the only person in any room, even when we were in a crowd of 100. I thought about the way that look had started to feel like pressure, like obligation, like I was supposed to be something more than I was, just to justify his attention. I'm not looking for forever, I said. I'm looking for connection. Something real, even if it's temporary. Have you ever had that kind of connection before? The question was supposed to be safe, a prompt for me to talk about former relationships in vague, unidentifiable terms. But all I could think about was James. Yes, I said. I was in love once. It was intense. Intense how? I paused. The camera rolled. The interviewer leaned forward, ready to capture whatever confession I was about to make. He was very present, I said carefully, very involved. Every moment, every decision, he wanted to be part of it all. And at first, I thought that was romantic. I thought that's what love was supposed to look like. But after a while, it felt like I couldn't breathe without him needing to know about it. Like my life wasn't mine anymore. So I ended it. The interviewer's eyes widened. You ended it? He didn't end it. People don't usually end relationships with people who are that devoted, I said. It's hard to look like the bad guy when someone loves you too much. But you were the one who left. Yes. I could already imagine the internet's reaction. 1,000 think pieces about what kind of cold, heartless woman walks away from devotion. 1,000 hot takes about how I didn't appreciate what I had. 1,000 comments about how he was too good for me. The interviewer leaned back, clearly delighted with the direction of the conversation. And now you're here, on a dating show. With other celebrities who might be looking for the same kind of connection. I'm here to see what happens. And if you were to see your ex here? I blinked. The question was pointed, too specific to be accidental. The producers had definitely briefed her. Hypothetically, I asked. Hypothetically. I treat him like any other contestant. What we had is over. I'm not here to rekindle anything. The interviewer smiled. Even if he's looking for a second chance? He can look all he wants. That doesn't mean he'll find anything. The interview ended without further incident, but I had a bad feeling about how it would be edited. My words would be clipped and rearranged, turned into sound bites that fit whatever narrative the production team was building. I'd been in this business long enough to know how the game was played. The rest of the cast arrived throughout the afternoon. I recognized most of them. Actors I'd worked with in passing, musicians I'd seen at award shows, reality stars I'd never met but had definitely heard rumors about. And then James walked in. He was wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than my rent. His hair was perfectly tousled, like he just stepped out of a photo shoot and into the real world. His smile was the same smile I'd fallen in love with, warm, open, disarming. And the moment he saw me, his eyes lit up. That was the worst part, the way his expression changed when he saw me, like I was still something precious, still something worth looking at. I looked away. The other contestants were already clustering around him, drawn by the gravitational pull of his fame. He was James Anderson, Academy Award winner, box office sensation, the kind of actor who could headline a movie just by attaching his name to the poster. Even in a room full of successful people, he was the sun, and everyone else was just orbiting. I stayed on the edge of the room, nursing a glass of water I didn't want, trying to become invisible. Victoria Parker found me there. She was one of the other contestants, a musician who'd had a few hits in the early 2000s and was now in the reality television revival phase of her career. Her smile was perfectly practiced, the kind of smile that said I'm friendly, while her eyes said I'm competition. Sophia, right? She extended her hand like we were at a business meeting. I've heard so much about you. All good things, I hope. Mostly. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. I watched your interview earlier. You were so honest. The word hung in the air between us, weighted with unspoken meaning. Honest was what people said when they meant reckless or too much. It was the nice way of saying you showed your hand too early, and now we all know exactly what you are. Honest is just another word for tired, I said. I'm too old to pretend I'm something I'm not. Victoria tilted her head, assessing me. I feel that. You're 47, right? 48 in 3 months. I'm 43, with the dinosaurs in this room. She gestured vaguely at the younger contestants, a 20-something actor who'd been on a teen drama, a musician in her 30s who'd recently gone viral on TikTok, a fitness influencer with biceps that could crack walnuts. They think we're here to be the wise voices or the cautionary tales. Which one are you? Neither. She smiled again, and this time it almost reached her eyes. I'm here to win. The first elimination challenge was announced at dinner. The production team had gathered us all in the dining room, a long table with white linens and crystal glasses, the kind of setting that made me feel like I should be wearing a ball gown. The food was catered, deliberately bland, the kind of meal that was designed to look good on camera, but taste like nothing. We're going to start with a compatibility exercise, the host announced. She was a former reality star herself, someone who'd parlayed 15 minutes of fame into a career in entertainment journalism. Each of you will receive an anonymous message from someone in the room. Based on that message, you'll choose your partner for the first challenge. The messages arrived on small pieces of paper, folded into perfect squares. I unfolded mine with fingers that were slightly steadier than I expected. I remember everything, and I haven't forgotten a thing. I didn't need to read the handwriting to know who it was from. I know James's writing anywhere, the way his letters slanted slightly to the left, the way he dotted his I's with tiny circles instead of dots. The message was meant to be romantic, to signal that he remembered our time together with fondness, with longing. But all I could think about was the night I'd left. The night I'd packed my bags while he was still on set, filming his breakthrough role. The night I'd left a note on the kitchen counter that said, "I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore." The night I'd walked out of the apartment we'd shared, feeling like I was both winning and losing at the same time. He'd called me for weeks after that. Every night, sometimes multiple times a night, until I'd finally changed my number. He'd sent flowers, letters. Stupid little gifts that were supposed to remind me of our time together. I didn't answer any of it. Because the truth was, I had loved him, that I had loved him so much it hurt, but love wasn't supposed to feel like drowning. It wasn't supposed to feel like I was disappearing into someone else, slowly and deliberately, until there was nothing left of me. He'd never understood that. The host was going around the room now, asking each contestant to guess who their message was from. "James," I said, when she reached me. "It's from James Anderson." The room went quiet. James didn't look surprised. He just smiled at me, warm and patient, like we were still the couple everyone remembered, like nothing had changed between us. "How did you know?" the host asked. "The handwriting," I said. "He writes his eyes with circles." I could feel the weight of everyone's attention settling on me. The younger contestants looked fascinated, like they were watching the first episode of some drama they were already invested in. Victoria looked like she was taking notes. The cameras were definitely rolling, capturing every micro-expression for the audience. James spoke before I could say anything else. "I was hoping you'd recognize it." "Recognize what?" "That I haven't forgotten you. That I still remember everything." The room was so quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat. "James," I said, keeping my voice level. "We're on a dating show. The producers asked us to send messages. That's all this is." "That's not all this is." The host looked between us, her expression a careful mix of delight and professionalism. "Are you two?" "We dated," James said. 3 years. It was the best 3 years of my life." "James." "Sophia left me," he continued, like I hadn't tried to interrupt. "She said I was too much, too present, too devoted. And maybe I was, but I never stopped loving her." The words hung in the air, heavy and intentional. I wanted to argue. I wanted to remind everyone in that room that love wasn't a competition, that devotion wasn't a virtue when it felt like a cage. I wanted to explain that I hadn't left because I stopped caring. I'd left because I was drowning, and he refused to see it. But arguing would just feed the drama, and drama was what the cameras wanted. "We broke up," I said carefully. "It was a long time ago. I'm not here to rehash old history." "Then what are you here for?" "To win." James laughed, a soft, surprised sound that made me feel like he'd just seen a side of me he hadn't expected. "Good," he said. "That's what I want too." The tension was unbearable. "All right, well." The host cleared her throat and clapped her hands together, clearly trying to steer the conversation back to the script. "We'll begin the compatibility challenge tomorrow morning. For now, let's all try to rest." I should have known the producers would pair us together. Based on the anonymous messages and the host's observations, we've determined the most compatible partners for the first challenge. The host stood in the middle of the room, a tablet in one hand and a smile that suggested she was about to deliver a bombshell. "James and Sophia, you're together." I felt my heart drop into my stomach. "This should be interesting," Victoria whispered to me, her voice low enough that the cameras probably couldn't catch it. "Are you okay?" "Fine," I said, even though I wasn't. "Are you fine?" The first challenge was simple. One person would receive instructions for a task, and their partner would have to guess the task based on the instruction they were given. It was supposed to measure communication and compatibility. James and I were the first pair to go. I stood opposite him on a platform in the middle of the room. The lights were bright and unforgiving, making everyone look like they were in a hospital. The cameras circled us like sharks. "Round 1, the host announced. "Sophia, you'll be the instructor. You'll receive a prompt and describe it to your partner, who'll have to guess what you're talking about." I opened the envelope and read the prompt, a symbol of something that used to be important to you. I didn't need to think about it. "A circle," I said. James's eyebrows shot up. "That's all? Just a circle?" "Just a circle." He paused, studying me. Then his face broke into the softest smile I'd seen from him all week. "The tree." I felt my chest tighten. "Yes." "I remember," he said, and the words were so simple, so unassuming, that they somehow hit me harder than anything else he'd said. "The night we first met. We sat in the park, and you drew a tree in the dirt with a stick. You said it was your favorite place to think." The cameras were probably loving this. 2 people leaning into each other, sharing a memory. But I didn't want to share anything. "Round 2, the host said. "James, you're the instructor." He opened his envelope and read the prompt. His expression shifted into something I couldn't quite read. 2 people, he said, standing at a distance. I stared at him. "That's not enough to go on." "You'll figure it out." The silence stretched between us. "James and Sophia after the breakup." I finally said, "When you came to find me." He nodded. "I stood outside your apartment for 3 hours. You didn't come out. You didn't even call." "I told you I needed space." "I know." His voice softened. "I know you needed space, and I should have given it to you. But I was scared. Scared that if I let you go, you'd never come back. And here we are. Here we are." The first day of filming ended with a camera in my face and the host asking for my honest reaction to James's attempt at reconciliation. "Honest reaction?" "We want real emotions," the host said. "Authenticity. That's what the audience connects with." The audience doesn't know what's real and what's manufactured. They only know what the cameras show them. "That's why we need your genuine reaction, Sophia. Whatever you're feeling right now, that's what we need." I thought about what I felt. Exhaustion, mostly frustration at being cornered again. Resentment that I'd been put in this position, on national television, forced to relive the breakup I'd spent 18 months trying to forget. But I also felt something else. Something I didn't expect. Anger. Anger that James had decided to air our history on camera. Anger that he'd smiled and made it all look like a romantic story. Like he was the devoted boyfriend and I was the cold, ungrateful ex. Anger that he'd reframed everything that happened between us, turning my boundaries into a flaw, my need for space into a crime. James told the truth, I said. He loved me. He was devoted. And I left him. But there's more to the story. More. I left because I was disappearing and he wanted to be part of everything I did, every thought, every decision, every heartbeat. And that sounds romantic until it isn't. Until you realize you're just a satellite orbiting someone else's sun, that I left because I needed to be a person again, not a girlfriend, not a symbol, but a person. The host's eyes widened. You're saying he... I'm saying he didn't see me, I said. He saw a version of me that fit his needs. And when I stopped fitting, when I stopped being everything he wanted me to be, he couldn't understand why I wasn't grateful. That night, in my room, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I'd made a mistake. The cameras were off. The crew had gone home. I was alone with my thoughts, which was the most dangerous place to be. James's message was still in my pocket. I remember everything, and I haven't forgotten a thing. He remembered that, of course, he remembered. James remembered every detail of every moment we'd spent together. He'd probably kept the receipts, documented the conversations, saved every text message and voicemail. He was the kind of person who hoarded memories, who held onto the past like it was a life raft, even when the present was drowning in front of him. The problem wasn't his memory. The problem was what he did with it. He used it like a weapon, a way to prove that he was the one who cared, the one who tried, the one who would never forget. And every time he said, I remember, what he really meant was, I'm holding you hostage to your own past. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. The next morning, a PA knocked on my door with a note. Emergency production meeting. 8 a.m. No cameras. Please be prompt. I arrived at the meeting room to find the entire cast seated around a table, looking as confused as I felt. The host wasn't there. The production team was there, though, and they all looked like they were about to deliver bad news. Our legal team has advised us of a potential issue. One of the producers said, We've been told that one of you has been feeding information to the press. Personal information. About other contestants. The room went silent. We're not accusing anyone, the producer continued, but we need to know who it is, and we need to know how they're getting their information. I felt my stomach drop. I looked at James. He was sitting across the table, his expression carefully neutral. Victoria was on my right, her eyes wide with alarm. Everyone else looked either confused or defensive. Squeaky will gets the grease, Victoria whispered to me. Someone's about to throw someone else under the bus. I didn't say anything, because I already knew who was behind it. I'd been the target of smear campaigns before, that I knew how they worked. Someone would leak a story to the press. A source close to the production would confirm that I was difficult, that I was too demanding, that I'd said something I shouldn't have. And then the narrative would spin, and I'd be the villain of the piece, while the real perpetrator sat back and watched. I just didn't know who it was yet. But I'd find out. Morning came too fast. I'd barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw James's face from the compatibility challenge, that soft smile that said I remember everything. It was the same smile he'd worn the night I left, when he'd stood outside my apartment for 3 hours, calling my name until the neighbors complained. I pulled myself out of bed, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. 47 years old, dark circles that no concealer could fully erase, and a career that had somehow landed me on a reality show with the one man I'd spent 18 months trying to forget. Benjamin, my cat, was not here to judge me. That was the only comfort. The call time for the first Getting to Know You segment was 9 a.m. I dressed in something comfortable but camera-friendly, a cream silk blouse, tailored trousers, minimal jewelry. I wanted to look like someone who belonged here, even if I felt like an imposter. The production team had set up the main living area like a talk show set, comfortable couches, throw pillows in soft pastels, and a coffee table that probably cost more than my first car. The cameras were already rolling, capturing the contestants as they filtered in one by one. Victoria Parker arrived early, as expected. She was wearing a silk robe over what I assumed was lingerie, the kind of deliberate, just woke up like this, styling that reality stars had perfected. Her smile was warm, her eyes sharp. Sophia, darling. She air-kissed both my cheeks like we were old friends. You look exhausted. Did you sleep at all? Like a baby. Liar. She laughed, but there was something calculating behind her eyes. I heard the producers are planning something big today. Something involving our luggage. I frowned. Our luggage. They want us to open our suitcases on camera, show the audience what we brought. It's supposed to be intimate and revealing. She made air quotes with her fingers. Personally, I think it's just an excuse to humiliate anyone who packed something embarrassing. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. My suitcase was mostly snacks and practical clothes, but I also had a small pouch with personal items. Nothing scandalous, but still private. The idea of the entire internet dissecting my underwear choices made me want to crawl into a hole. Don't worry, Victoria said, patting my arm. I'm sure you'll handle it beautifully. You're so authentic. The word was a weapon, and she'd wielded it perfectly. The host gathered us in the center of the room, beaming like she was about to announce a lottery winner. For today's segment, we want to get to know you on a deeper level. And what better way than to see what you chose to bring on this journey? A PA wheeled in a row of suitcases, each one labeled with a contestant's name. I spotted my own navy hardshell case near the end of the row and felt my stomach clench. We'll go one by one, the host continued. Victoria, why don't you start? Victoria stepped forward with practiced grace. Her suitcase was pink and covered in designer logos, the kind of ostentatious display that screamed, "I have money, and I want you to know it." She unzipped it with a flourish, revealing perfectly folded clothes, an entire cosmetics bag the size of a small child, and a silk sleep mask. "This is my favorite pajama set," she said, holding up a matching silk camisole and shorts. "I like to feel luxurious even when I'm sleeping." The camera zoomed in. The other contestants murmured appreciatively. "Also," she dug deeper into the case, "I brought my skincare routine. A girl's gotta take care of herself, right?" She was charming, engaging, utterly in control. The audience would love her. Then she pulled out something else, a small leather pouch, clearly meant to be hidden. "Oh, this," she laughed, her cheeks flushing slightly. "This is just a little something I packed. For emergencies." The host leaned in. "What is it?" "Just," she hesitated, looking down. "It's a warming herbal tea, for stomach aches." The room went quiet. Everyone knew that James had a notoriously sensitive stomach, a result of years of irregular meals on set. Victoria had been photographed with him once, at a charity gala. The tabloids had run a dozen speculative pieces about a secret romance that neither of them had ever confirmed. "Victoria," the host said, her voice dripping with implication, "is that for anyone specific?" Victoria's eyes darted toward James, who was standing at the edge of the group, his expression unreadable. "I brought it for myself," she said quickly. I know it's silly, but I like to be prepared." It was a lie so transparent that even the cameras seemed to pause. James didn't react, didn't smile, didn't offer any kind of acknowledgement. He just stood there, arms crossed, watching the scene play out like it had nothing to do with him. I caught myself feeling a flicker of something, satisfaction, relief, and immediately squashed it. When it was my turn, I felt every eye in the room land on me. I unzipped my suitcase and revealed its contents. A few simple blouses, dark jeans, a pair of comfortable flats, a small toiletry bag with only the essentials, moisturizer, cleanser, sunscreen. And then, at the bottom, a large compartment filled with snacks. The host laughed. "Sophia, you brought an entire grocery store?" "I like to eat," I said, "and I don't trust craft services." "Fair enough." She peered closer. "Any hidden treasures in there?" I reached for the small pouch I always kept at the bottom, the one with my personal items. But as my fingers brushed against it, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The pouch had been unzipped. I never left it unzipped. I was meticulous about that, the kind of paranoia that came from years of sharing dressing rooms with strangers. I pulled the pouch out carefully, trying to keep my expression neutral. Inside, everything seemed intact. My phone charger, a small notebook, a few individually wrapped pieces of dark chocolate. But the chocolate was wrong. I'd packed for pieces. I remembered counting them. Now there were only 3. Someone had been in my suitcase. I looked up, scanning the room. Victoria was watching me with a smile that was just slightly too innocent. James was looking at the chocolate in my hand, his eyebrows furrowed. "Sophia?" The host's voice cut through my thoughts. "Is everything okay?" "Fine," I said, sliding the pouch back into my suitcase. "Just checking my inventory." The host laughed, but the tension in the room was palpable. The suitcase reveal continued, but I barely registered the rest. My mind was stuck on the missing chocolate, and the fact that someone had felt comfortable enough to rummage through my things while I was asleep. When it was James's turn, the atmosphere shifted. His suitcase was sparse, a few tailored suits, a leather travel case for his toiletries, and 2 neatly wrapped packages that he retrieved with deliberate care. "What are those?" the host asked, leaning forward. James unwrapped one of the packages, revealing a box of artisanal dark chocolate, the kind that cost $40 for a single bar. "I brought these for someone," he said quietly. "They used to be her favorite." The room went silent. "Who?" James's eyes found mine, and I felt the weight of a dozen cameras all swiveling in my direction. "She knows who," he said. I couldn't breathe. "James," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "We're not doing this." "Not doing what?" "Not turning every segment into an episode of our history." Victoria jumped in before James could respond. "Wait, are you saying those chocolates are for Sophia?" "I didn't say that," James said, but he wasn't looking at Victoria. He was still looking at me. "It's fine," I said, because the alternative was letting the silence stretch into something awkward. "It's a nice gesture, but I think we're both here for new experiences, not old ones." "Who says I want new ones?" The words hung in the air, loaded and dangerous. I could practically hear the producers salivating in the control room. I didn't answer. I couldn't. After the suitcase segment, we were supposed to head to our rooms to unpack properly. The production team had assigned us based on compatibility, a polite way of saying they'd put the most dramatic pairings together. James was in the room directly next to mine. Victoria was across the hall. I was trudging up the stairs with my suitcase when I heard Victoria's voice behind me. "Sophia, wait up." I turned. She was struggling with her own bag, her face a mask of exaggerated helplessness. "Can you help me with this? It's so heavy, and I can't lift it on my own." She was blocking the entire staircase, her eyes wide and pleading. Several contestants had already passed us, offering vague promises of assistance that they immediately forgot. I looked at her suitcase. It was huge, but she'd carried it up the stairs earlier, without any trouble. "Sorry," I said, stepping around her. "I've got my own bag to deal with." "Oh, but... Besides, I'm sure someone else can help you." I gestured vaguely toward the top of the stairs, where Victor Hayes was standing. He was one of the newer actors, handsome, polite, the kind of quiet presence that faded into the background until you needed him. "Victor can help," I said. Victor blinked, clearly caught off guard. Perfect, Victoria said, her smile turning brittle. Victor, would you mind? He looked between us, clearly reading the tension. Then he shrugged and took her suitcase. Sure. No problem. I continued to my room and closed the door behind me. 5 minutes later, I heard a knock. I opened it to find James standing in the hallway, his shirt slightly rumpled, his hair disheveled in a way that made him look younger, softer. You okay? He asked. Fine. You seemed upset when Victoria asked for help. I'm not upset. I just didn't want to carry her luggage. That's not what I meant. He hesitated, leaning against the doorframe. I know you don't trust her. Trust her? I barely know her. You've known her for exactly 24 hours, and she's already found a way to make a segment about me. I stared at him. What are you talking about? The tea. The suitcase. She brought that on purpose. She wanted everyone to think it was for me. So, you noticed. I'm not blind, Sophia. He ran a hand through his hair. I know she's playing a game. I just don't care. She's not you. I felt my chest tighten. James. I'm not saying this to start something. I'm just saying I see her. I see what she's doing. And I want you to know I'm not part of it. He held my gaze for a moment longer, then turned and walked back to his room. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. The evening schedule included a confessional segment, individual interviews where the contestants would share their true feelings about the day's events. I sat in the interview chair, facing the same woman who'd questioned me before. How are you feeling about today's suitcase reveal? She asked. Exposed, I admitted, which is probably the point. And the chocolates. What about them? James brought them for you. How does that make you feel? I considered my answer carefully. The cameras were rolling. The internet was watching. Anything I said would be dissected, analyzed, weaponized. It makes me feel seen, I said, but also trapped. I don't want to be the person he's still chasing. I want to be the person I actually am. And who is that? I don't know yet. That's why I'm here. It was the truth, as much as I could give. Later that night, the contestants gathered in the common area for the matching segment. We were supposed to send heartfelt messages to the people we wanted to pursue, a gentle way of saying we had to choose our romantic interests for the upcoming challenges. I stared at my phone, the screen glowing in the dim light. James's message arrived before I could compose my own. Asterisk, I still remember everything, but I'm trying to learn to look forward. Asterisk, I read it 3 times. Then I typed my response, deleted it, typed it again, and finally pressed send before I could second guess myself. Asterisk, I'm not the same person you remember. I hope you understand that. Asterisk. His reply came seconds later. Asterisk, I know, and I'm looking forward to meeting her. Asterisk. I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled through the other messages I'd received. Most were polite, general interest, the kind of vague flattery that came standard with the show. But one was different. Asterisk, I noticed you looked uncomfortable during the suitcase segment. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. Victor, asterisk. I blinked. Victor Hayes, the quiet actor who'd carried Victoria's suitcase. I'd barely spoken to him. But his message was kind, unassuming, the kind of message that said I see you without demanding anything in return. I sent him a quick reply. Asterisk, thank you. I might take you up on that. Asterisk. The next morning, the production team revealed the results of the matching segment. I was paired with James. Victoria was paired with Victor Hayes. The host announced it with all the gravitas of a game show reveal, her voice rising with anticipation. James and Sophia, the pair that everyone's been waiting for. I felt the weight of a dozen stares settle on me. Victoria's was the sharpest. Her smile was perfect, but her eyes were cold. This is going to be interesting, Victoria murmured, leaning toward Victor. Do you think they'll make it through the first challenge? I think they'll figure it out, Victor said quietly. They both seem like smart people. His voice was neutral, but I caught a flicker of something in his eyes, a quiet observation that seemed to see right through the drama. The first challenge was announced, a couples quiz. Each pair would answer questions about their partner, and the pair with the most correct answers would win a special date. James and I stepped to the front of the room. Ready to lose? He asked, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. I'm ready to win, I said. Same difference. The host fired off questions. Asterisk, what's your partner's favorite food? What's their hidden talent? What's the last thing they remember from the day you met? Asterisk. James answered every one of them perfectly. Asterisk, she loves Italian food. Specifically, the carbonara from that tiny restaurant in Rome. Asterisk. Asterisk, her hidden talent is that she can perfectly mimic the accent of anyone she's met for more than an hour. Asterisk. Asterisk, the last thing she remembers from the day we met is that I was wearing a ridiculous pair of sunglasses and she laughed at me. Asterisk. Every answer was correct. When it was my turn, I hesitated. What's James's favorite way to unwind after a long day? I thought about it. He likes to listen to classical music. Specifically, the ones with the sad violins. Correct. What's the one thing he's most afraid of? I paused. I knew the answer. I'd known it for years, but saying it out loud felt like giving away a piece of him that he'd trusted me with. He's afraid of being alone, I said quietly. Not in the physical sense, in the sense that he'll be forgotten. James's expression flickered, just for a moment. Correct, the host said. We won. But the victory felt hollow. Because later that day, as I was walking down the hallway to my room, I overheard Victoria talking to another contestant. James didn't have a choice, she was saying. The producers set it up. They wanted the drama. And Sophia, well, she's not exactly going to say no to a chance to be relevant again. I stopped, my hand on the doorframe. She's been coasting on her reputation for years, Victoria continued. And now she's got James on a leash. Poor man, he's too nice to see it. The other contestant laughed. I couldn't tell who it was. I stood there, frozen, until Victoria's voice drifted away. Then I walked into my room, closed the door, and sat on the bed, staring at the wall. She wasn't wrong about one thing. The producers wanted drama. But Victoria had just made it personal. The game was only just beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of Victoria's words, though they stung more than I wanted to admit, but because of something else. Something I'd noticed during the suitcase segment, the missing chocolate, the unzipped pouch. It wasn't just curiosity. IT was deliberate. Someone had gone through my things while I was in the common room. And the only person who'd had enough time and access was Victoria. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction with her. The too sweet smile, the casual questions about my past, the way she'd lingered near my door after the matching segment. She wasn't just playing a game. She was building a case against me. The question was, why? The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. Asterisk, meet me in the garden at 7 a.m. Come alone. That. Asterisk. I crumpled it and shoved it in my pocket. The garden was off camera, a small courtyard with hedges and a fountain, tucked away from the main house. Perfect for private conversations that weren't meant to be recorded. I arrived 5 minutes early. Victoria was already there, sitting on a stone bench, her face lit by the pale morning light. Sophia. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Thank you for coming. Cut the act, Victoria. What do you want? She laughed, a light, musical sound that didn't match the coldness in her gaze. Straight to the point. I like that. It makes what I have to say easier. She pulled out her phone and swiped to a screenshot. I found this in your room. Well, technically, I saw it on your phone when you left it charging in the common room. You really should lock your screen. The screenshot was a text conversation, supposedly between me and someone named Margot, who was described as a casting director. In the messages, I was supposedly saying I was only on the show for the exposure, and that I planned to humiliate James publicly to boost my own career. This is fake, I said flatly. Is it? Because the timestamps match your phone's records. And the number, well, I looked it up. It's a real casting director. She just doesn't know you. Victoria, I've never met anyone named Margot in my life. Prove it. The silence stretched between us. This is a setup, I said. You're trying to get me disqualified. Disqualified? No. Darling, I'm trying to show everyone who you really are, and when I show this to the producers, she tucked her phone away. They'll have no choice but to let you go. James will see the truth, and then maybe, just maybe, he'll stop chasing a ghost and start looking at someone real. She stood up, brushing imaginary dust from her skirt. You have 24 hours. Leave voluntarily, and I'll delete this. Stay, and I'll release it to the entire production team. I didn't go to the producers. Instead, I went to Victor. He was in the common room, reading a book, something about computational linguistics, which seemed oddly specific for an actor. Victor, I said, sitting across from him, I need your help. He looked up, his expression curious. With what? Victoria is trying to destroy me. She's fabricated evidence, text messages, supposedly from my phone, and she's threatening to release them to the producers. Victor set down his book. What kind of evidence? Fake conversations where I say I'm on the show to humiliate James. She took screenshots off my phone when I wasn't looking. He studied me for a moment. Did you keep your phone locked? Normally, yes, but I was distracted. I left it charging. Shit. He rubbed his forehead. Okay, do you have access to the original phone records? The ones from your carrier? I think so. I can log in from my laptop. Good. Get them. And while you're at it, do you have any way to confirm your location during the timestamp she's using? Any photos, calendar entries, anything? I paused. Actually, yes. I was in a meeting with my agent at the time of those supposed messages. I have an email confirmation with a timestamp. Victor nodded slowly. Then we can refute it. But we need to be careful. If she's threatening you, she's also planning to use this publicly. We need to get ahead of her. How? He leaned forward, lowering his voice.